First of all, I know there's a lot of people out there that did not get the results that they wanted at Super 32. And that's a big hit, of course, because it's a huge tournament. It was an unbelievable opportunity to get on coaches' radars. It's a great opportunity to put yourself into a great position for the season. And a lot of people just, we work really hard. And that was one of the few tournaments that we really peak for all year round. And the best of the best are at Super 32, almost always. With few exceptions, most of the best wrestlers are at Super 32. It's an unbelievable accomplishment to place, an even greater accomplishment to win it. So what do you do if you didn't reach your goals? If you failed to get on the podium or failed to win? Well, we have to remember that we keep it in perspective. Wrestling is more like a marathon than a sprint. This is just one step in your career to becoming a champion and reaching your ultimate goal. So perspective. And number one, that begins with your mindset. At this point in time, if you're not working with a mindset coach once a week, that's probably the reason why you're underperforming, because there's so many really good wrestlers right now that have equal or greater talent than you do. And some of them don't. And for the ones that don't, you should be beating them every single time. And for the guys that are a little bit ahead of you, if you have that mental edge, you're more likely to beat them. So we have to start working on our mindset. We also want to evaluate from a technical, physical, and mental standpoint how this last tournament went and why we got the results we did. So technically, you should write down what you were doing in your matches well and what you could improve upon. What are 3 areas of improvement? What's 3 things you did well? Then you should write down the same thing physically in terms of your sleep and your eating. This is something you really want to take the bull by the horns by. You really want to take the bull by the horns and get a good understanding of what exactly you need to do for eating and sleeping and your fluids throughout a tournament, the night before a tournament, the morning of, how you're hydrating throughout the day, what you're eating. You need to understand that. Sometimes our underperformances are because of a lack of sleep or suboptimal nutrition. So write that down. How are you eating in between rounds and before the tournament, and you're making weight strategies? A lot of times we know Super 32 is historically a cut weight tournament. It's a weight management tournament. We can't kid ourselves, the Super 32. So we have to know this is what it's going to be like for some of the competitions later on in the season, especially as we get into the late days of winter. How we manage our weight is critical. And if you're making mistakes now, you're likely to repeat those mistakes. So you have to take the bull by the horns there. Also, and most importantly, mentally. Write down 3 things you did well mentally, and write down 3 things that you could improve upon mentally. I gave you one before. If you're not already working with a mindset coach, you're shooting yourself in the foot with a large gun. You need to be working with the mindset coach every single week. Simone Biles, after choking in the 2020 Olympics, she said she met with her mindset coach religiously every single Wednesday. That has to be part of your wrestling. Also, you have to write down what exactly were you telling yourself. Write down the exact thoughts while it's fresh in your mind right now. What were you telling yourself before and during each one of your matches? What were you telling yourself right after the matches? What was your warm-up like, your pre-match routine? What were you doing the 15 minutes right before your match? And then what were you doing the 15 minutes right after your match? And then always asking yourself, how's that working out for you? Is there anything you could improve? Is there anything you could do better? What are some things that you did well? You have to also know what's working well. One of the biggest mistakes we make with our mindset is things go well for us sometimes, and we don't document it. We don't write down exactly what we did. What were we telling ourselves? How did we get our mojo going? How do we whip up those emotions to feel exactly like we wanted to in that match? Even if you weren't wrestling someone that good, if you were feeling real good going into that match, if you felt like you were wrestling close to your optimal, you better write down what you were telling yourself before, during, and after that match so you could replicate that over and over. Mindset comes down a lot to consistency. And you can't even talk about having a consistent performance if you don't first talk about consistent thoughts, consistent emotions, and consistent behaviors. So you need to take the bull by the horns. Like I said, it's just one tournament. It's a blip on the radar. It's one small step towards your ultimate goal. So if things didn't go well for you, or even if they did go pretty well for you, you need to use this as an opportunity to improve technically and mentally. If you're not improving both physically and mentally, there's something wrong. You know, you're paying for the experience, and so you could get a hold of your performance and to understand, how am I competing when I'm up against good competition? Forget about the average person you wrestle during the season. That person's going to probably beat themselves. But what are you doing? What are you telling yourself when you're going up against the very best and when you actually have some pressure on you? That's why this is a great opportunity. It's not over. Super 32 is not over. You can't think like that. You now have to evaluate after this tournament just took place, what exactly was going on technically and mentally. What did I do well? What could I improve on? Never think a tournament is over as soon as you leave. It's only just begun, because now you extract the lesson, and that's often the most fruitful part of Super 32. If you haven't already, make sure you DM us about getting a mindset coach. We have slots opened up before the season begins. We're really going to start filling up, and then we might not have room. Also, when the season comes, the prices kick up. So right now is your opportunity to get the best price and to make sure you get a mindset coach. Okay, once we fill up, we fill up. That's all we could do. If there's nothing else you could do, at least do our weekly Zoom call Monday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. That everyone can do. But you really want to have that one-on-one mindset coaching over the phone. So don't delay any longer. Make sure you get a mindset coach, because that if you underperformed at Super 32 and all you get from that is, now I need to start working on my mindset or taking it more serious, now you've got the biggest lesson. Now you've improved. Now you've actually extracted the lesson, and you're maximizing going to that kind of tournament. It's too expensive, and it's too much of an investment of time and money to not gain all the experience you possibly can. And that starts in your mind. Make sure you DM us. Start mindset training today. Every serious wrestler needs to be working on their mindset all year round. Mindset makes the difference.